Chapter on Pipeman on W4CY Radio.
Wake up, America! It's time for the adventures of Pipeman on W4CY.com, West Palm Beach's #1 internet radio station. Here's your host, the Pipeman.
I'm the hole in your head. Watch me like you're trying to forget. Living inside, I am the hole in your head. A constant reminder while you're all on my shit. I am the one that's getting under your skin. And you can try, but you will never be whole again. Watch me like you're trying to forget.
This is the Pipeman here on the Adventures of Pipeman W4CY Radio, and I'm here with our next guest who first of all, I really dig his new song, but I dig the whole concept of his music. So let's welcome to the show, EKOH. How are you?
What's up, dude? Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate you. Glad to be here. What's going on?
Oh, my pleasure. And the reason I said what I just did is because I saw that basically your fans have labeled you as Heart Hop, and I love that.
Yeah, me too, especially because I don't think I'm savvy enough to have come up with that on my own. So it's actually pretty cool.
It is a really cool label. If you're going to have a label, I mean, I hate labels, but if you're going to have one, that's the one to have.
Yeah, if there's anybody, I'm pretty against all labeling with everything. So to have to put a label on myself, it would have to be something that really reigns true with me. And that one absolutely does. So I'm pretty lucky to have, really dedicated and just kind of close-knit fan base that really cares and really digs into what I'm about and kind of connects with it in their own way, and then take it and build their own communities and their own slang words and their own terminology and make their own stuff. And it's really cool, really, just for me to be a part of what they're doing is really awesome.
And you know what else I love about it is, okay, so first of all, it says a lot about your fans of what they think of you, for them to come up with that, and that they really, from based on what I saw about you, that they really understand who you are as an artist. Like sometimes fans, they don't. They just like the music. They don't really get what the artist is all about. But it's almost like they get you.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like, that's the byproduct of if you're honest in your music and you write your own music and you put the time and effort into, there's nobody with their hands on this other than me. And so everything that comes out is, made by me and I have my hands in everything. And so if you're watching it, it is authentic,
Yeah.
And if you're authentic with everything that you're writing and you're being honest in your lyrics and you're really putting yourself out there, people will relate. And that's one thing I've kind of learned more about songwriting in general is I used to think to relate to a broad audience, you need to speak in broad terms, you need to, brush in broad strokes. But the one thing I've learned more and more, the more I do this, is that the more specific you are to your own story, somehow the more relatable you become to more people, because it's not necessarily even about the details. It's about the feeling.
Yeah. And because they can tell you're being real. Like, it's so easy, at least for me, to tell if an artist is just, plugging in some formula or if they're just being real.
Yeah, it's easy to kind of phone it in sometimes if you want to. And in a world where, not even trying to phone in, but there's a lot of people that don't, write their own songs or write their own music, or they're being influenced by, a label or producers or whatever it may be. I've tried my best throughout my career to kind of cut out the noise and just listen to myself and only make what I want to make and only make what I like. And
yeah.
It's a weird thing. I think it's more of a service to the fans to not try and make what they like.
Mm-hmm. I've also found, like when you try to please people, there's always people you're not going to please. Like you're never going to please everybody. So you might as well please yourself, and then your people will come.
Yeah. And that's 100%, man. And the success of, if you find success in trying to please others, it's not even as gratifying. It doesn't feel as good, because in the back of your mind, I did that I wasn't being 100% true. It's so much better if it's like, okay, I wrote exactly what I wanted to write, how I wanted to write it, and said what I wanted to say, and it connected. And that's a special feeling.
I love that. And you know what I also love about the label that you have, because I'm so anti-label, is that when your fans especially give you a label, that's, if you were to call it quote unquote a genre, it's your genre. It's not like being part of a genre. It's just being you. And like I go on tour and I do coverage of music festivals. And one of the funniest things we do when I do interviews on site is I because I hate the genre labels and boxing artists in, I'm like, well, if you were to come up with your own genre that only your band was in, what would that genre be? Because that's the only way you're really able to be an artist and express yourself, opposed to, oh my God, like they're not playing something that I'm used to hearing. Like you should be able to play whatever you want,
Yeah, so that's a question you actually ask people.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that.
It's so cool. Fun too, because like nowadays there's so many subgenres, micro genres that it's kind of getting ridiculous. And I find that a lot of artists, they have to go by this like formula. I call it an algebraic equation to make their music, because God forbid they should just stray a little bit off the road. People are like, oh, sellout, poser, blah, 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 or whatever they want to say. And all the gatekeepers come out and say shit. And to me, like being an artist means experimenting and doing what makes you feel good, no matter where you go with your music.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more, man. I think a lot of that comes down to labels, pushing people. It's easier to sell something that is just this one thing. It's like, if you know what this is, it's in this box, we can sell this.
Yeah.
And that's always been my issue with labels, is being like, well, what are you? I'm like, I'm just me, man. If I want to make a rap song, because that's how I'm feeling that day, and that's how I feel I can best express the message I'm trying to get out is through this medium, I'm going to do that. If I'm feeling like, yo, I want to make some heavy shit, let's go hard on, make a song like Hole in Your Head or Hurt Myself or something like that. I'm like, that's how I can get out what I want there. And then it's like, okay, well, we want you to do more of this. And my head's always like, I can only make what I can make, if that makes it.
Oh yeah, that makes total sense. And I think that's where artists today, I think in some ways, are a lot luckier. Everybody talks about the negativity of things like Spotify and TikTok and all that, and not having the record labels. But as somebody that was very involved in the music scene on the Sunset Strip in the 80s and seeing what these record labels did to these bands, it's like, thank God artists like you can just make their own music, because that's what destroyed genres and destroyed bands, was the record labels doing that.
Yeah, it becomes commercialized, and it's investors, and it's all these people that aren't creatives, judging the trajectory of an artistic medium. It's like, how are we letting this happen? When did the power come out of the hands of the artists and the creators and go into the hands of just the people making decisions with money that should not be making these decisions? It is a detriment to the genre, to the medium, to the art, for these people making these decisions. And it's not everybody. There are people at labels that know what they're doing and have an artistic vision, but it's hard to have that for 20 artists under your belt anyways. And, now that's why you see the resurgence of all these random genres that we thought were dead or weren't cool anymore. It's like, no, they were always cool. It's just, we only saw what labels were pushing to radio. Yeah. And so we are a slave to whatever gets put in front of our faces. And now when it's like, oh, you can like whatever you want again. Yeah. Now so people are like, oh shit, I have control to like what I like. I don't have to like only what's put in front of me. Let's go.
That's one thing I love about Europe when I go over to Europe to cover festivals there, is because that's exactly what happened. There were bands that I thought were gone and dead for like 10, 20 years. I'm like, oh my God, they were just in Europe all this time.
Dude, you'll see that a lot with like especially like underground hip hop acts like that I grew up listening to. There was like, this was like the punk rock of hip hop back in the day, where it was like, you know, Jedi Mind Tricks and R.A. the Rugged Man and artists like, you know, Styles and Beyond, artists like this that don't even tour the US, but they go over to Europe and absolutely crush.
Right.
And you're like, yes, okay. I'm glad there's an audience. I knew it was somewhere. And it's like, this is where it's at. Like, I should live here.
Right. You know, it even holds true for people like me in press or doing coverage at all these music festivals and shows, because I do them all over the US. I do them in the UK. I do them in Europe. In Europe and UK, they still treat press as if they're actually press. Whereas here, it's like they're trying to eliminate all the individual press so that they can control the narrative just like everything else.
Yeah, I mean, that it's unfortunate. You know, I played Finland, I think, was that last year? We did a festival out in Finland, and yeah, it just felt like going back in time a little bit. Mm-hmm. And it was just, you know, the vibe is so cool, and the fans are so appreciative. And not that they're not in the US, but it's just a very different energy.
Yeah.
You know, it's also a different feeling when, you know, English isn't somebody's first language and they're singing all your words, and you're like,
I know, right?
Wild. Yeah.
I always think, man, that must feel so good as an artist. These people can't even, you know, have a conversation with somebody in English, let's say, but yet they're singing every lyric of your song and they know what it means.
Yeah, that's probably one of the most like culture shock and also just like whoa moments, right? Is going that far away, just knowing that your music can get that far. And I mean, that's, you know, more of a testament to, you know, the Spotifys and the TikToks that, you know, a lot of people do have negative things to say about. It's like, well, how are you going to do that before this? Because that puts the power back in the hands of the artists, where we can make something like that happen on our own, and that's incredible.
Yeah, totally. So the new single, Mayday, I love the concept of that because I can relate to it too. So maybe you could tell the listeners your story behind that song.
Oh man. I mean, Mayday is a song for me that's been kind of years in the making. It's a song about being unable to open up and be vulnerable. A lot of my problems I've noticed in personal relationships or in, you know, romantic relationships tend to be my inability to open up and be vulnerable and to really let somebody in and tell somebody what's really going on with me and be authentic and let you see the parts of me that I'm afraid that you're going to judge. And tell you the thoughts that I have that might feel stupid, and you know, if I'm insecure or not feeling confident, or all these or I'm scared or things like this, or all these things that I hold in, and instead of talking about it, you know, and especially if you're in a romantic relationship, your partner probably knows,
right?
You know, they can sense it, and will ask, you know, what's going on? Tell me what's going on. I just want you to open up. I want you to open up, and instead just pushing it down. And there's always the moment when everything comes to the surface, whether it's, you know, self-destructing in a way with like substances or just making stupid decisions or doing things that are a detriment to yourself. And by the time it comes out, whether it's a lie that gets found out or, you know, hurting somebody, by that point, it's too late to open up. But also by that time, it's the easiest to open up because everything's already out in the open. And when somebody finally knows everything, it's so much easier to open up. And I've noticed, why am I closest in my relationships right after one of those moments?
Right.
That's
a good, that's some good enlightenment right there. Because some people, they don't even think of that part of it.
Yeah. I think it was like, why do I feel closest with the people I'm with right after chaos? Right after something terrible happened. And it's really because then everything's out in the open. I can be vulnerable. It's like, you now see all of me and you accepted it. So I feel safe. And now I can talk about these things, and then the cycle happens again. And it's like, you know, Mayday, the fucking ship's going down. and now I'm finally ready to open up, but it has to come crashing down first.
That's why I totally relate to this song too, because, growing up for me, guys aren't supposed to do that and express their feelings and just deal with it, and the thing is, I always talk about, it's funny you say romantic relationships, because now at this stage of life, I'm like, I need to find the person who knows the me inside my head, because nobody in the world knows that person.
Mhm.
And especially when you're an artist like you, or, in the public eye, people think they know you, but they don't,
Yeah.
and it's like you're always living in a facade, because yes, part of you is out there and that is part of you, but then there's another part of you that nobody ever gets to experience or see, because like you said, you're hiding from judgment. Society dictates, oh, blah, 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 and I think it's great that you made a song like this so people can see the message, get the message, and maybe future people can change and not have to bury that, because nothing good happens from burying that crap.
No, not at all, man. And I agree with the, can I find someone that I can let really know the person that's up here, because I feel, you're like, if I told you everything I was thinking, you be like, what the fuck, are you okay?
Totally.
But to be able to find someone that's like, yeah, that I can be completely authentic with, that you can let see all of you, is a very risky endeavor to kind of make. It's not easy to let somebody know all these parts and be open, and it's just so uncomfortable, and especially, you're right, being raised with toxic masculinity and all these things of not opening up, or not being sensitive, or whatever it may be, that there's things that are ingrained in us that you can't do this or can't do that. And man, I remember I was watching, that movie Iron Claw, and this like horrible series of events that happens with his family. I'm just like, this is just toxic masculinity on a mass scale, of like all these guys that were unable to open up and just say what's going on. And you push it down for long enough, and you're right, there's nothing, everything you bury deep down will eventually grow, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it never grows into anything good.
No. I kind of like relate to, did you ever see the series Dexter?
Yes.
Okay, so I kind of related to Dexter because he had 4 relationships in that series. The first one, he could only be good Dexter because that woman would never understand his dark passenger. So he always had to hide that dark passenger. And then the second woman, he could never be good Dexter because she wanted only the bad boy. So God forbid anything he did would be good. She wouldn't like that. Third one was temporary because of a situation. But Hannah McKay was the key, because Dexter could be everything he was with her, and there was no judgment, and he could finally be 100% himself, and then he lost the urge to kill people because he could be 100% himself. And I think that says it all.
Yeah, it's a huge thing. And that is like, the idea that I am not every piece of me, I am all the pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is, I do have, especially when man, I hate saying, like, when you're in this business, it feels very like pretentious, but there is a piece of this that is very put out for the world, social media, put on a face, sell your stuff, as it becomes that, because you want people to see the art that you've made, and there is a certain way to get your art to people, the way that they'll be able to see it with algorithms and stuff like that. So there is a piece of that game you do have to play, and a face you do have to put on to get the art that you care about to people, so that they can see it, So there is a piece that you have to put on for that. And then there's a piece you have to put on when you're around, if you're playing live shows. And then there's the piece when you're just at home with your dogs and you have to go pick up dog shit in the backyard and be a normal human being. There's all these different pieces, and having one bad day or having a good day, neither of these is my full identity. It's a encapsulation of it all, and it's hard to remember that that is the whole person, is all of it, instead of just the little moments.
Totally. Now, I also want to talk about the special show you did on the 9th of February, because there were two things I thought were really cool about that. Considering I have I think 30 pairs of Vans.
Nice.
I was totally like, well, that's really cool. Vans will be on site giving away free swag, and then you could get in by just wearing Vans. That'd be perfect. Yeah. I could get in everywhere. And then more importantly, donating to Music Cares, because what a great thing for helping. What a great charity organization. And, I think it's something that's so seriously needed now more than ever, because there's so much mental illness in the music industry now, and there's so much help that's needed. So I think not only is the organization way cool, but it's way cool that you did a show that donated money to that organization.
Yeah, I mean, that whole thing ended up being on every side of it was so fulfilling and just so cool to see, and it was very moving just to see the whole thing, because we've been doing this thing with, signing Vans. I've been doing that for maybe 3 years now, and we've signed thousands of pairs of Vans, and it's a big part of the community that my fans have built is wearing Vans to shows and getting them signed while I'm performing, and making their own and bringing them to shows and meet and greets and stuff like that. So it's always been such a huge piece, and we've always tried to get Vans attention. Every quarter we would make a video of all the highlights of us signing, and we tag Vans, and it was always just like just throw another one out and nothing's going to happen. They never reached out, and I was just kind of resigned to the fact that it's not going to happen, but we're not going to stop doing what we do. And so the fact that they reached out and took some interest and asked and were curious about what we were doing, and at that point we just kind of Hail Married it, and we're like, okay, well, let's do a free show if you're wearing Vans. Let's make this something cool for the fans, because at the end of the day, for us, it really comes down to how can we make this a cool fan experience.
Yeah.
And make something, unique for people to be a part of. And once, we're like, okay, we can make it free, but what do we do for people who aren't wearing Vans? And I've always been a big, Warped Tour. And so I know what Kevin Lyman does. And I've known about Music Cares for a long time, especially during the pandemic. Yeah. What Music Cares is doing. And I think it's incredibly important. And like you said, I think it's very important now, not only because of the amount of, how mental illness is actually being, a light shed on it, but there's more artists now than there ever have been, I think. Mm-hmm. And that's a part of social media and being able to do it independently. So there's so many more artists now. There is so much more pressure as an artist because there are so many more artists, and the output you have to have is so much greater. And with social media being a piece of that, there's even more pressure, and there's even more nuance to the problems that you can face as an artist, and the mental gymnastics that you have to learn how to do, and the pressure and all this kind of stuff. And none of us have health insurance.
Right.
So because you're chasing a dream and you want to do this kind of stuff. And I mean, a lot of people don't have health insurance that have regular jobs. So how important it is to support an organization like that, to me, is a no-brainer. So the fact that we were able to support that organization, and Vans ends up coming out, and a lot of the fans that came out to that show, a lot of my fan base don't have, and it's not even just my fan base. A lot of people are struggling right now with financially. It's hard. Concert tickets are not cheap. Buying merch isn't cheap. Getting a babysitter, getting gas, parking, all the kind of stuff that goes into a night of going to a show is not cheap. And so a lot of the people that came out to that show wouldn't have been able to come to a show if it wasn't free. And so the fact that they were able to come to a show, and Vans also goes, hey, we see you and we see what you're doing and we support you too. You know, it was like a group of people that were told, like, you're important.
I love it.
And to me, that's the most important thing as a fan or as a human, being told, like, hey, you're important. Don't forget that. Just because you can't afford tickets to a show doesn't mean you don't deserve to go to a show. Doesn't mean you're not important. Doesn't mean you shouldn't have cool shit. Like, we're going to show you that you are important, and we're going to give you a good time on us. And that was a cool thing. And the fact that Vans showed up, and then Vans picked up the check for Music Cares. They're like, we're going to pick up the check and pay for it. So everybody got in the show free. And if you didn't have a pair of Vans, Vans put up the money for music. It was just such a cool thing all around. And it was by far one of the most fun, fulfilling experiences I've had playing a live show ever. It was just really, really fun.
Oh, I so love hearing that. It's so amazing. Because I even think nowadays, I'm like, I don't even know how teenagers go to shows. I went to shows like almost every day of the week. But it was like $2 for a ticket, $5 if I wanted a t-shirt, you know? And you could scrape the change together to go to a show. I don't even know how teenagers do it nowadays, to be honest.
Neither do I, man. It's definitely different now than I used to go to free shows in parking lots, and those were the best. I can't remember the last, you know, what free show has happened, you know, or tickets just used to be $20 if it was like a really big bill, you know, $25. Now tickets are $45, $75, $100. It's a lot.
Yeah, totally. So let's tell everybody how they can reach out to you on the web, connect you on socials, check out your new single Mayday, plus all your other music and everything you got going on.
Yeah, you can find me on all social platforms. It's all at Echo Music. It's EKOH Music everywhere. Echo on all music platforms, YouTube, wherever you listen to music, you can find me.
Nice. Any final words you want to leave our listeners with?
Oh man, I don't know. I mean, thank you, man. Thanks for tuning in and listening. I appreciate anybody who, you know, is open-minded and willing to give our music a shot and listen to something. Maybe if it doesn't, it might not necessarily feel like it's in the genre that you normally play around in or listen to music in. I hope that you can relate to the substance, you know, sometimes even more than the genre, because that's kind of what we're all about.
I think it's so important. And me, even myself, like, I'm a metalhead and a punk, and I dig your music. So genre doesn't mean crap. Okay.
I mean, I grew up on metal, punk, and hip hop, like underground hip hop, which when I was growing up was like punk rock.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I mean? So I moved from punk rock straight into underground hip hop and was like, this is fuck the system. We're doing it on our own, DIY. Like, we'll say what we want, go against the grain, like say it how it is. I was like, this is where it's at.
It's the attitude. It's the attitude,
is, man. It really is. I do believe that. So I appreciate that compliment, man. Thank you.
Anytime. And thanks for giving us such great music and a great message. And thanks for being on the Adventures of Pipeman.
Anytime, dude. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY Radio.